One more thing I want to hit on today. There was a story probably a lot of you saw related to NASCAR. And, there was this story, which I think most of you saw, which was there is a NASCAR driver. First of all, I don't even know. I'm not a NASCAR person. I think it's great. Whatever people want to do for fun, it's great with me. NASCAR hasn't been my thing, but it's very, very popular in the South. I didn't even know where the Talladega was, but turns out it's in Alabama. And at the NASCAR Talladega racetrack, there is a driver who is named Bubba Wallace. It's an African-American Alabama citizen who became part of NASCAR. In fact, he was the one who was pushing for NASCAR to get rid of the Confederate flag symbol, which they had somewhere at NASCAR. But what happened in the last few days is really, really instructive on a lot of points. And I'm not just going to sit here and tell you the story. I want to tell you, as I often say about this show, why it matters to you, why you need to care what happened, why you need to understand the political influences that got us here. So this driver, Bubba Wallace, every driver or car, I guess, has his own little garage type thing. And Bubba Wallace claimed, or he went into his garage or his, whatever it's called, assigned area, and found in his stall at Talladega and found a noose. He found a rope tied in the shape of a noose. And so, of course, he contacted the people of NASCAR, and within a very short amount of time, the NASCAR put out a statement. They were outraged by someone apparently having left a noose in this stall for this one black driver, Bubba Wallace, of NASCAR. And so the NASCAR officials came out with a very, very, very strong statement denouncing it, and they're, of course, outraged. The governor of Alabama, a woman named Kay Ivey, she came out with a blistering statement about how she's shocked and appalled to hear of yesterday's vile act against Bubba Wallace in Talladega. There's no place for this disgusting display of hatred in our state. Racism and threats of this nature will not be condoned or tolerated. Even Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador under President Trump, former U.S. governor, potential presidential candidate, came out with a very, very, very strong tweet denouncing this and wrote, "We should all stand with @Bubba Wallace today against the cowards who secretly put the noose in his garage stall. Watch your back, cowards. Bubba has a bigger army than you do. #hate won't win. #we stand with Bubba." That was Nikki Haley. And so, as you likely know, there was an investigation, of course. The FBI sent 15 agents down to Alabama to do the inspection, to do the investigation, to find out where this noose came from, who put it there. Obviously, they're trying to dive in and figure out who put this there, what was the motive, is there, because obviously it could be a federal hate crime if they discover that someone had done this. So, as you likely know, as it turned out, it was not a noose at all. They have, in all of the stalls for the drivers, they have pull-down garages, and because I guess the garage door is heavy, they have a rope, and at the end of the rope, they have, instead of just holding the rope, they make a what they thought was a noose. They make a circle because it's easier. Put your hand through, and that makes it easier to pull down the garage door. That was what was on the floor of Bubba Wallace's stall at Talladega. On top of that, the investigation revealed that very piece of rope with a small hand pole on it had been there since November of 2019 and was not a noose. It was just something that's in numerous of the garages, is what they use to pull down the door. So I'm obviously very glad there wasn't a noose put in Bubba Wallace's stall. But what I want to talk with you about for the rest of the show today is the idea of where we are politically in this country, how we got to the point that we had that kind of reaction, and what I think really would be a great lesson for all of us to learn. Number one, stop and think about the fact that the FBI sent 15 agents down to NASCAR because of what appeared to be a noose. Now, no one was injured. If it had been a noose, it would have been a threat, but no verbal threats, no physical confrontation. No one had been injured. No one had been killed. No property had been damaged. There was just a noose. And I do understand that the noose is a symbol, very, very ugly symbol of the time in the South, in the Democrat-run South, where lynchings occurred. And people who were in lynch mobs, KKK, again, Democrat-run, Democrat KKK, Democrat South, in the era when there were lynchings, they occurred because lynch mobs would grab someone who they thought had done something wrong, and no following of the justice system, know what they're supposed to be doing, and literally hang Black Americans who were the victims of these lynch mobs. So the noose has an ugly historic symbolism. It is not nothing. It is an ugly historical symbolism. And so the FBI, so on the FBI to start with, 15 agents. Now, I'm going to guess that there are unsolved murders, kidnappings, rapes, just horrific crimes in this country. But still, we had the FBI sending 15 agents down because someone thought they found a noose, and there was never any picture of it, or ultimately what was shown as a picture was, the rope with a little tiny circle at the bottom, which is the hand pull to close the garage door. But the FBI reacted by sending down 15 agents. You can say that's a good thing because, for people who try to claim that the criminal justice system is inherently racist, that there is a systemic racism problem, and that the justice system is unconcerned about Black victims in this country, you can say, well, actually, that was a huge reaction of the FBI to say, if anything like this has happened, even appears to have happened, we're sending down major league forces, 15 people, to look into the case of one non-noose in a garage at the Talladega for a Black NASCAR driver. 15 people. The good interpretation is great proof that there is just unwillingness to tolerate anything like that in America. But the other point about the FBI is this. As I've been talking about on this show, the left's determination, just visceral determination, to drive this country apart, to drive a wedge in America, to separate people by races, to drive America into racial suspicion, racial hatred, racial distrust, to place every American in a hyphenated group silo that says we have, Caucasian Americans and African Americans and Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, and everyone lives in their silo, and the Democrat Party runs all of them, keeps all of them pitted against each other, all of them competing against each other. This is the MO of the Democrat Party. And part of the MO, as we talked about, and we're going to continue talking about, of the radical left, the communist history of America, starting back in 1920, when the communists were cooking up these ideas, was the idea you have to try to divide America by race. The Communist Party, in its own words, in its own documents, was realizing that they could not convince America in the 1920s, prosperous America, where abundance flowed, where even the poorest Americans were doing better than almost everyone else in the whole rest of the world. America was a country where there was just booming prosperity and opportunity. Communists had a very hard time. They recognized we're going to have a very hard time convincing America of the virtues of government-controlled society, government-controlled economy, socialism, and then communism, because Americans could see the virtues of freedom, free markets, and capitalism. So the communists decided the only way to divide America is by race. I've been on this subject for days. I will continue on. It is a tactic the leftists, the communists, identified and used and still use today. And this is what the left in America is doing today. This is what got launched under and perpetuated under President Obama. 8 years of the Obama presidency. Very left-wing guy. Very left-wing determination to move this country more toward socialism, more toward government-controlled society, more toward government-controlled industry. The Marxist instinct of President Obama was to grow the power of the federal government, grow the regulation of the federal government, to tamp down on excesses of success in America, to try to thwart the virtues and benefits of freedom and free markets and capitalism and entrepreneurship. You had the radical left under President Obama working to undermine the greatness of America's free market system and the basic core assumption, the cultural liberty of America. And so you had, as the media followed suit, whatever President Obama wanted, the media followed suit. And so you had more and more characterization of issues in this country as racist, more and more characterization by the Obama administration that anyone on the conservative side, on the Republican side, on the GOP side, there was always a hint of, well, you know, the right wing in this country, they're really the extremists. They're really the ones out there. They're really dangerous to this country. At the same time, as the left, led by Obama, was the dangerous attack on America, on the constitutional structure of government, on the idea of limited government, on the idea of a robust free market system. As the left in this country, intellectually under Obama and the media following suit, drove America more toward radical leftism, more toward Marxism, more toward government-controlled society. At the same time, they worked to manipulate the American political conversation, to manipulate the way Americans think about freedom and free markets, so that the idea of right wing, which could just mean conservative, you know, people who like the Constitution and support limited government, began to be cast by the Obama administration as questionable and kind of dangerous and kind of out there, not too sure about these people. This was very intentional. And so you had, for example, on the Obama administration, the whole industry of trying to characterize conservatism as radical and dangerous emerged and grew. So you had, for example, people talking about, you know, we need to have a secure border. People talking about we need to have some kind of fixing of our immigration system. So we have citizenship means something again. So we do something about the millions of people living in America illegally. Any kind of talk about trying to fix problems created, not just under the Obama administration, but for years before that, were labeled and tagged by the media, by the left, by the leftist pundits as dangerous, radical, kind of racist, kind of fringy. And so you had even the idea in America, you had a very determined effort of the leftists to continue to drive this wedge in American society and to characterize ideas of people on the right as kind of racist. If you didn't want to go along with securing the border, if you wanted a secure border, you were probably kind of racist. You don't like people who don't look like you. You don't want people coming here who don't look like you. That was the argument of the left when people said we want to have a secure border, we want to have an immigration system that works. The argument of the left, the Obama-led media, was to call that racist. And I'm getting at the idea, the determination of the left to infuse American political culture with suspicion of racism, with suspicion of the existence of a vast right-wing opposition that is racist in nature. That was a mission of the Obama administration. It wasn't just an unfortunate and unintended side effect. It was a mission of the Obama administration to instill doubts in the hearts and minds of Americans, doubts about their fellow citizens, suspicion about racism. Now, I'll be clear. There are white supremacist groups in this country. They have no political home. White supremacist groups are evil. They are wrong. They have no place in America, no place in either political party or anywhere. They're flat out evil. They have no place in America. They are not honored by either political party. You don't hear anyone on either political side of the aisle, either side of the aisle, saying white supremacy is okay. It's horrible. It obviously exists. And there are probably more people in America, however, who believe that the earth is flat than actually embrace white supremacy. But I want to get at saying, of course there are white supremacists, and they're evil, and we see them sometimes in marches. And everyone of all political stripes deplores them, deplores what they stand for, denounces them, will not accept them. So getting back around to where we are with this whole NASCAR story, I think 8 years of President Obama and the left that followed him along, and the journalists in this country who worked so hard to just push the Obama agenda, which was the left-wing agenda, which was the Marxist agenda, which was to divide people, make them all suspicious of each other. That agenda really has seeped its way, made its way into many avenues, many places in America's culture. So, back to the FBI. I don't know if Christopher Wray running the FBI sent 15 agents down over a noose, apparently, which wasn't a noose, but people thought it was noose, sent 15 agents down because a noose was found in a black NASCAR driver's stall, whether he sent 15 agents because it was a show of, we denounce racism, we're going to fight it, we're going to get to the bottom of this immediately. I don't know if that was the reason, or the reason that maybe he is among those in our culture. And there are millions of them who have unconsciously, subconsciously bought into the effort, the lies about America that got pushed on America by the Marxists, by the leftists, who want Americans to think the country is more racist than it is. I'm not saying there are no racists. There are racists in every country in the planet Earth. There are racists of every skin color on the planet Earth. No one's saying that no racism exists. But the picture of America as a barely seething beneath the surface, outrage racism, that is just waiting to explode. That was the picture of America that President Obama tried to paint, that the leftists who followed him tried to paint, that the media tried to paint. And so you have Christopher Wray heading up the FBI. He hears about a noose, and he sends down 15 agents, as I say, whether or not it's because he thought that would be a show of opposition to white supremacy, or because he thought, this is the biggest problem ever. We have seething racism and just, widespread white supremacy in this country. And this is a major emergency. I don't know what drove him. But obviously, he sent 15 agents down to Talladega to discover that there was no noose. I wish there could be, but there was an FBI statement issued just saying what they have now figured out. They said on Monday, this is the FBI statement, on Monday, 15 FBI special agents conducted numerous interviews regarding the situation at Talladega Superspeedway. After a thorough review of the facts and the evidence surrounding this event, we've concluded that no federal crime was committed. NASCAR also had, said that it appeared that there wasn't a noose, it was a hand pull. And so what I want to really close out today, because I'm running out of time here, I want to close out today is just saying this about that. We have to be conscious of how successful the leftists in this country have been in stirring up racial suspicion, racial distrust, the false belief that America is a nation seething with racism, that right below the surface there's just racism brewing everywhere. We have to fight that. We have to fight that characterization of America because it's not true. Because the vast majority of Americans of every race, ethnicity, national origin, skin color, pretty much go about their day every day trying to live their life in freedom, to love their neighbor as themselves. They don't spend time trying to think about attacking other people because of their skin color. This is simply not what America is. But when America is the evidence that's overwhelming that America has a wonderful culture, a wonderful rich culture, and mix of people of various races, ethnicities, and national origins, because we're not a country founded on race, national origin, or ethnicity. We're a country founded on ideas. Those very ideas of America's founding are what created this country. And when the world can see that, and Americans can see that we're doing a great job. We do a great job, this wonderful, whatever you want to call it, melting pot or whatever term you want to use. America has done a beautiful job of coming together as a people and standing against racism, standing against discrimination, standing against bigotry. Yes, we always have more improvements we can make. We always have more ways we can try to be better as a people and make a more perfect union. But America is a good and noble country, not filled with the racists the left so desperately wants America to think are out there. So you had a Nikki Haley assuming just because the story came out, a noose was left, and she blasts right away. The governor, the Republican governor of Alabama, she blasts right away about racism and intolerance. What I would love to see happen is more and more Americans becoming aware that America is actually a good and noble and great country filled with good people who are not racist, who are not trying to foment racial tension, who are not intolerant of each other. I would love for the next time any incident like this happens to have the reaction of the Nikki Haleys, the governors, everybody to say, that doesn't sound good. Let's have an investigation. Let's be sure we understand what happens. We need to back off the ledge of we just jump over the cliff and assuming the worst, when an allegation, a story like this comes out, and it's really a disservice to the good people of America, to the vast majority, the 99% of Americans who do not spend their time focusing on race and feeling intolerant of other people because of their skin color. Because what we're really doing when we do that, we have the Nikki Haley reaction and the governor's reaction, we're buying into what the left has been trying to do, not just for the previous 8 years under President Obama, but for decades before, to work to divide America by race, to make us suspicious of each other, to make us resentful of each other. This is a leftist tactic used to gain political power. And the best remedy is for all of America in rejecting it, is just don't play their game. If you have a story of a noose, you have a story of something written on a wall, something that appears to be racist, of course we investigate. Of course we look into it, get to the bottom of it. But we should be assuming in this country that we are a country filled with good people. The American people deserve the benefit of the doubt. The American people deserve the investigation before we even conclude that anything bad really happened. We deserve the presumption of goodness, the presumption of innocence, the presumption that not just of individual people at NASCAR, but the American people as a whole deserve the presumption of innocence that says we're not going to just buy in hook, line, and sinker because someone said, I think something racist happened. We look into it, we investigate, we prosecute if needed, but we deserve better than to have the immediate pouncing with the left is hoping will happen. The immediate pouncing and criticism of racism, because whenever you accuse, you say there's racism out there, it's a racist country, you're accusing the entire people of America, the good people of America, and America doesn't deserve that accusation. There may be individuals who do, we'll investigate, we'll go after them, but America does not deserve the ugly accusations that are made so often against the people itself, the country itself. America is better than that, and they deserve better than that.